think Arizona was once just the wild, wild west? Well, sometimes it feels like it still is. But what you may not know is that Phoenix was built with some Victorian refinement.
From a proper parlor to decadent furnishings and extravagant china and silver, the Victorian age flourished during Arizona's pre-statehood days.
So the Rosson House, where we are, was built in 1895 and probably one of the few Victorian homes left in Phoenix, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's definitely one of the last ones, and it's probably the one that's best preserved.
Would this home have been considered a home for the wealthy?
Absolutely. When this house was built in 1895 for about $7,500, it was considered to be one of the most expensive houses built here in Phoenix at that time.
Really?
Yes.
The home is about 2,800 square feet, plus an attic and cellar. It was built by Dr. Rosson and his family. They rented it out shortly after it was built. 3 other families then lived here before it became a boarding house sometime after 1948.
In the 1970s, the city decided to not take the square and turn it into a parking lot. Thankfully, they decided to preserve it, keep the buildings, not tear them down, and turn this into a museum so that we could save a little bit of Phoenix's past from the turn of the century.
It cost $750,000 to restore the home. Today, that would translate into well over $3 million. Peanuts, however, compared to other downtown buildings and attractions, but a priceless investment to preserve a piece of the city's past.
What is it about this home that's unique compared to homes that we build today? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things, but in terms of the structure.
In terms of the structure, you have a house that has 12-foot ceilings, which is very much unlike a lot of houses built today and in the interim. You've got a bit of a smaller kitchen. You don't have any built-in cabinets. You don't have granite countertops. You don't have the electrical appliances, and so you'd have a coal stove. This kitchen would have been the hottest room in the house because it doesn't matter if it's 115 degrees outside. You still have to eat.
Right,
and
right.
You still have to have hot water because the stove was also your hot water heater.
The Rosson House did have one luxury most homes didn't.
They did have electricity. You might have been able to be lucky enough to have one small electric fan because those were around, but they were pricey. And you probably wouldn't give it to your servants to have here in the hottest room of the house.
Right.
And if you were a guest, you might be advised to not drink too much tea.
So there's only one bathroom in the house, and you were saying that basically eliminated the option for guests, is that right?
It did. As a guest, you're supposed to be staying downstairs. That's why the downstairs area was a little better decorated, more nice finishes, and upstairs was plainer because all of your guests would just be staying downstairs and not using the restroom.
When it came to fashion, Victorian women knew how to carry their weight.
Okay, I want you to try this on.
Okay.
This
holy
is a
moly.
weighted vest that we have that is about a dozen pounds.
Yikes.
And it gives you an idea of how much extra weight Victorian women were carrying around with all of their clothes combined, all of their petticoats and underclothes and corsets and corset covers, and their outside clothing, which was a lot heavier than ours, not to mention a lot bigger, but
This is crazy.
This
is like walking around with an armored vest. What about when they slept at night?
You would loosen your corset, but you wouldn't take it off entirely.
Boy, how things have changed.
Oh, thank goodness.
The Rosson House gives insight to not only how the better half lived, but also how they made their living.
This room we have set up as the doctor's office. We know that the men who lived here, the different families, used this as an office. And we think that Dr. Rosson likely used this as a medical office for a time. Dr. Rosson had a degree from the University of Virginia at a time when most of the doctors here in the United States had no formal training. They might have mentored with someone, might have some common sense knowledge, but he was more educated than most. He graduated in 1872 after taking 4 classes to become a surgeon.
That's another piece of the past that has thankfully progressed. Arizona Highways Television is brought to you by Arizona Public Service and the Arizona Office of Tourism.